Hey online world, what's going on? So no Katana videos for a little while. I tested positive for COVID today, so I'm just laying low. My mom's house, thankfully has a garage. I can hang out here a little bit because my house does not have a garage, and it does have the computer set up where I would be streaming / playing Katana. So with that being said, I'm talking today about if you have to lift your car up high enough, if you're going to drop the transmission yourself in order to replace clutch, throwout bearing, rear main seal, pilot bearing, etc. Or if you're just taking out the transmission to send it off to have it rebuilt or upgraded, whatever the case may be. So right now I have the car on 2-ton jack stands, 4 of them, 2 in the front, 2 in the back, and they are up 3 positions. And one thing to note on a, for my example, this is the 1995 Mustang GT, and you know, steel over time it gets soft, and you know, especially being in the elements, in the weather, in the outside world, being exposed to those conditions. Thankfully, this one's had a pretty good life, driven by a, well, he's now an old guy, but he was the only owner for 25 years. He actually bought it at the dealership in 1995. And then the same dealership I ended up working at a Ford dealer in 2016. So to combat, you know, having the jack stand, the smaller service area of the jack stand, you know, going up into the, kind of making a dent or mark up in the frame because of the potential softness, I cut a 1/4-inch thick piece of steel plate material at my machine shop, and I just put it right in between the two ears, the 2 high positions of the jack, because those actually aren't wide enough to fit on either side of this frame piece. So one of them or both would be touching the frame, but the middle section, which would have more surface area to distribute more of the force of the weight of the car, would unfortunately not be touching the frame. So hence the 1/4-inch plate on each of the 4 jack stands. So it is very, very sketchy to, or at least in my opinion, very unsafe to lift the car, you know, 2 feet high to drop a transmission onto a transmission jack that I'll show you shortly, with 2-ton jack stands, because they have a well, these particular ones have a 6-inch by 7-inch footprint, and I'd like a much beefier footprint, and I would also not like to lift the I guess you would call it the ratchet part of the jack stand all the way up to its max position, because that it would be a little bit more flimsy, so to speak, at that position, and I wouldn't want anything moving around that is supporting the weight of the vehicle. So, and plus these don't even go up to 2 feet tall. I did take a measurement. They think at the highest point that these pieces ratchet up out of the jack stand, they sit at about 16-17 inches. And in order to drop the transmission out of your car, you're probably going to want to jack the car up about 20 to 24 inches off the ground. So hence my big red jack stands I got from Home Depot today. And so I got 4 of them, of course, because I'm going to eventually go around one corner at a time and replace jack the car up high enough to pull out the 2-ton jack stand and slide in one of these 12-ton jack stands at each of the 4 positions under the car. Now the other thing, you got to have a floor jack that will lift up high enough so you can slide one of these puppies in, because, okay, so for example, these big red, you can see the brands, so you can look them up later. You can find them on Home Depot, but at the lowest position, and I'm going from, you know, this part right here, because these 2 flat surfaces are even with each other in height, and obviously you don't want to lift on the ends. The ears are meant to go around whatever frame or whatever jacking point that you're letting the car down on. So I'm going to be letting, since these have a much wider you know, footprint than the 2 tons, the frame is going to sit real nice right about, you know, right about there. So and it can go left or right either way. That's fine, because you know these are rated for 12 tons, 24,000 pounds, and this is a it's called a 3,500, yeah, 3,600 pound at most, 95 GT. So at the lowest position, this big red jack stand sits at 17 3/4 inch from the garage floor to the top position where you would be letting something down with weight on it. And then if you step up to position 1, which is just pulling it up, the ratcheting piece up out of here from the jack stand itself, and then letting it sit on its first position that you pulled it up to, would be 18.5 inches. So we're talking another 3/4 of an inch. And then if you move up to position 3, if I called the first one 1, position 2, and then position 3 here, we're at 19 3/4 inch. And then I'm hoping to not have to go beyond position 4. Just making sure I get a good comparison there, the visual. But position 4 sits at 20 3/8 inch. So I may have to go a little higher. Of course, I will not be using those 1/4 inch plates that you see on the 2-ton jack stands, because these are definitely beefy enough to handle the frame and not dent, damage it in any way once the weight of the vehicle is on each of these 4 12-ton jack stands. So I could go up to a 5th position. I'll measure that, of course, if I have to. And just to give you a visual, of course that's taking it all the way out. This time I'm gonna put the screw in. Usually, sometimes jack stands like the 2 tons, they'll have a piece right here instead of this screw, and it'll just be a cutout with like a little tab, and then you can take a punch or a chisel and you can hammer that in, so you can't pull this ratcheting piece all the way out. If this is indeed called a ratcheting piece, I'm just, again, I got COVID, so give me a break. So again, this is kind of what it looks like at full position. It might have one more tick to go, but you can see that it's looking like quite a bit more than 20 3/8. Let's call it maybe 6 inches or so more. So let's just say it's 27 inches at max height. So it's just a little, I mean, it is a much beefier jack stand, but I don't want to have to raise it any more than I have to in order to drop the transmission out of the car. So I'll be using those 4 jack stands. And then this is the pretty cool piece here. This is a Pittsburgh 800-pound low-lift transmission jack, and that is what I'll be sliding underneath the car. And I already took measurements, so when I swap out the 2 tons for the 12 tons have that bigger footprint I was talking about. But from my measurements, the width of this jack will still be able to slide in between the the footprint of the 12-ton jack stands, the one on either side in the front of the car. That will basically be on either side of the transmission, if you're looking at everything front to back, or back to front, however which way you want to say it. So you can buy this one at Harbor Freight like I did. It was, I think it was exactly $200, you know, tax not included, of course. And at the minimum height, it is 8 inches. So you should be able to slide that for sure. I mean, you probably might be able to slide it under the Mustang with its stock ride height, honestly, because you know, as you know, these ride pretty high from the factory. But of course, once you've lifted the car up, you can slide this in there. You just mainly need to be concerned about the width of the jack. And then the max height, I did measure at 24.5 inches, and I did take that. Excuse the ruler and the ruler I used in school, class D9. So I guess this must have been from elementary school, like 20 years ago. So, but the reason I'm using that because most of my tools are at my other toolbox at my machine shop, along with my tape measure and all that. So, kind of running on scraps here in some regards. So, but I took my measurement after, and again, I don't have a level. So, one of my friends gave me this pen that it has a level in it, which is, I've never seen that before. That's pretty cool. And I just got a a level gauge this way, and then of course I did do it this way. Because the jack does have, you can tilt it to a certain number of degrees one way. I think it's one way goes 30 degrees, either back and forth, or it's a 15-15 split. And then it'll also tilt the opposite, in the opposite plane, either a similar number of degrees or it's less. You just have to look up the specs from the brand that I gave you online. So basically, I took a ruler to get a straight edge once I leveled the plate out, and then I took a measurement from the ground up to the bottom of the ruler to give me an as accurate as I could measurement here. And then I did measure to the base plate here, not to the height of these support ears, because as you can see, well, you might not be able to see it very well, but I took my machinist scale, and it's about 3/32 of an inch thick, these support pieces here. And those are really just, once you have the transmission, once you have the jack up under the transmission at a good secure point, then you take these ears and then you just push them in so that it kind of holds whatever part of the case of the transmission you grab, kind of holds all that in place. And then this jack does have a nice chain that you can wrap around the transmission. The chain just hooks right on this little tab that they welded on here. So that's pretty cool. One other thing to note is this jack is nice. It does have a little tray on either side for your tools. So once you're working on the car, you don't have to keep sliding down your creeper, if you're lucky enough to have one. I don't have one, so but my coworker said he would let me borrow one since he's not using it at all. His personal one, so that'll be nice. But so you just have to keep, so you don't have to keep getting out of the car and crawling back under and back and forth, and wasting time and you know, all that extra exercise there. So yeah, it's but of course, once you slide this under and you go to jack the car up, or jack it up to the transmission, just make sure that you come up to a good area where you can get a good grab, and then put the chain over. But make sure once the transmission on here, it's not super front heavy, because you know that bell housing surface area is a lot bigger, and you just want to make sure you're not front heavy. Like as soon as you get it unbolted from the engine and you slide that transmission back, you want to and then you slide the whole jack back with it. You don't want the transmission to tip forward off the jack, even though you got this chain on. I don't think it would pick up the way the transmission. It depends on how high it is. I don't think it would pick up the back of the jack, like tilting it forward. But you just want to just be as safe as you can, really. And the other thing to note with this jack is the reason I say 24.5 max height, even though you can pump it up a little higher. Let me see if I can get the camera steady and still to show this. When I go one pump higher beyond the 24.5 inch position, you go higher, but it sinks right back down to that 24.5 inch position. I believe that's because in the shock assembly, you're kind of letting it have a slight air leak once you let push out the piston too far. So I think it kind of creates an air leak, and then thankfully, once it comes back down to its 24.5 inch position, it seals right back up. Which is, if it wasn't sealing, then this thing would just sink even lower, I would imagine, and then you'd have a dud on your hands from Harbor Freight. I don't know how many times that's happened to people, but who knows? Hopefully not too many, to one person at least at the same time. So, with all that being said, is there anything else I can think of? If you have any questions, let me know in the comments about, like, if you're lifting a car up yourself to work on the underneath it to drop something out, like a transmission, let's say, for example. Yeah, just, you know, safety is the utmost key here, and of course make sure you have all your tools And oh yeah, what I did want to mention is that, so this is a 2 1/4 ton floor jack. Kind of a odd, you think it'd be 2 or 2 1/2, a more even size, but it's 2 1/4. So that the max height that will go, and I did, here, you all could say something about my welding. I did do some, it's just MIG welding. MIG welding is the, and keep in mind, I am no expert welder by any means, but MIG welding is the easiest for me compared to TIG, stick, and aluminum welding. One guy at our shop can do aluminum welding, and that is badass, because that, like, I can't even make a 2-piece aluminum stay together by welding, so it's pretty impressive. So this 2 1/4 ton jack, which comes out to what, 4,500 pounds lifting capacity. It has a max height if you just had just the puck, but again, I'm going for that bigger flat surface area so I don't make any dings or indentations in this softer, older frame. It has a height of about, I want to say it's 13, 14 inches. I should have measured, but it doesn't matter, because there's no way I can lift. This will not go up high enough to a high enough lifting height in order to get even the first of those jack stands at the base height of 17 3/4 inches. So yeah, you're gonna have to also get a 3-ton jack, that just so it's more beefy, and again, just safety is paramount here. You don't want to go out by getting stuck under your car. That would absolutely suck. So yeah, get yourself a 3-ton floor jack, and luckily I have access to one. There's one at my machine shop that I can borrow, just long enough to get the jack stands up underneath, and I can bring it right back. And we work on our work trucks from time to time. We have thankfully we got F-150s, and we got one Chevy, but we'll get rid of that soon enough. But 3-ton jack at the one in my shop has a max lifting height of just over 18 inches, which will get me to that first position. But then I will have to think of another solution, like either putting a piece of wood, like a 2x4, on top of the puck of that 3-ton floor jack to get a little bit extra height, or maybe just investing in a 3-ton jack that already has a much higher lifting height, like for example the one that I wrote down at the fourth position, which is 20 3/8 inches tall. So I think that's everything. When you're starting out with the car on the ground, of course, make sure you put a wheel chock in the back, emergency brake pulled. If you have a manual, put it in gear. Obviously, if you have an automatic, it's probably already in park. If it's in neutral, put it in park. And basically, you can get to a point like I have. Let's see if you can see it here, where all 4 wheels are off the ground, because I have all 4 2-ton jack stands at the 3rd position on each. And and then you can go from there. Just slowly go up a little bit higher on each. Always stay even with each jack stand, and then go to the next higher position. And just, again, be as safe as possible. So the last thing I wanted to say is that I will also be making, or buying some wood. Probably I'll probably be buying some 2x12 by however long it is piece of wood, and I want to make some blocks that I can like drill some screws into each of them. And basically, once the car is at the position that I need in order to drop the transmission out of the car, then I will take those makeshift blocks, which have a 12x12 surface area, and however high I stacked them, the top layer of those wooden blocks will have like a little border around it. If you're like looking down at it from bird's eye view, it'll have a border, and so basically it will go up under the tire, and it will prevent, like, let's say for, God forbid, one of the jack stands failed, the tire would come down onto that block of wood, which would be as close as possible to the touching the bottom of the tire, but not quite. So that way, it's all for safety. So if anything happened while I was underneath the car, then I would be safe. And then with those block of woods, there'd be one under each of the 4 tires. So just so you have that built-in redundancy. And I mean, maybe you don't have to have the border on the top, but it's just to keep, just in case the car were to accidentally roll forward or backward, it would be captured on the back or the front by that border, and then you would just have the ones on the sides for just extra safety. So I think that's about it. Hopefully got everything I want to say out in this video. And again, if you have any questions, you can hit me up in the comments. And yeah, that's just a little project I'm working on until this car market, you know, cools off and I can actually afford a Coyote. Or I mean, I don't need a Coyote right now. I'm pretty happy where I'm at. I'm only 27, so yeah, I'll just keep working and saving more, and then probably mess around with a Coyote when I'm in my 30s, I would imagine. So or whatever, maybe there's something else cool out by then in the later 2020 decade. So yeah, thanks for watching, and I'll see you in the comments. Bye.